going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into episode number 1 of A Puncher's Chance. With me, as always, my co-host, Mr. Steven Hines. Steve, welcome to the first episode.
This is big. We've been talking about this for a while. This is big, and I can't think of a better fight card to welcome this in.
Well, and that is the big controversy. I know a lot of people wanted us to do a lot of different fight cards last year, but there's a lot of hype around this, so we hope that we do not disappoint. I think we're close to almost 1,000 views, watches, or comments on the commercials leading up to this, so we are ready to go. And like I said, this is the fight card we had to do it on. Conor coming back. We have Michael Chandler. We have some incredible fights. This is going to be a fun one. For this UFC 257, we are going to do strictly the main card. Why? Because most of you aren't ready for the amount of random fighting knowledge that not only Steve has, but I have, and the amount of fights that we like to watch. So once we give you a little taste of how this goes, and once we get this first episode out there, you're going to get a lot of undercards, a lot of random UFC events that we might find intriguing, maybe some boxing matchups. There's a lot coming your way. We are going to kind of plain and simple start from the bottom of the fight card and then work our way up to the main event, and honestly a co-main event if you really want to count this Chandler Hooker fight, because it could be in that stratosphere, quite honestly, if our cards play out right, which we hope that they do. So let's start out right away with Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Ribas. Now, they both have very similar backgrounds. They both, of course, come from the exact same country. They both have trained in the same gyms for a long, long time. Now, they are split up now, but they have one of them has, Rodriguez has Amanda Nunes in the back of her corner as well. So these ladies have a lot going for them. They are the two young stars in this division, 7th and 8th ranked fighters right now.
This is made, the matchmakers, Dana White said, one of you two is going to become the next superstar.
Yeah.
Go do it right here.
Yeah.
So you got Marina Rodriguez, who is a taller striker, versus Amanda Ribas, who's the shorter, more technical, a lot of ground game.
Yeah.
This is going to be phenomenal. Ribas is one of my top fighters of the last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
She is a superstar in the making, and I believe she is like a 300 favorite.
Yeah.
Minus 300.
Yeah.
So
minus 310.
I mean, it's tough to bet against her, especially just the way she's just been working through the division. All these old veterans, she's just smoking through. I mean, just not even close.
Yeah.
So Ribas all the way with this one. But it's tough. I mean, because that length can really hold her off.
Well, and see, this is why I love this card so much. Is people who are casual UFC fans, as I call them, people that like the big names, the Conors, the John Joneses. This is a fight that if you want to get into the sport more, if you want to be a bigger fan of the UFC, this is the kind of a fight that you want to watch. This is a fight that I would liken to a main event most any other random Friday night or Saturday night UFC pay-per-view, or not even a pay-per-view, but just a normal fight night on ESPN Plus. This is a main event most other times, in my opinion. I love this card. And like you said, you have length basically for somebody who's a little bit smaller but has a much better ground game. And these fights can go one of two ways. And that is why I think Dana White went ahead and was like, listen, let's get the star of this division propelled even further. And he went right off the bat with this one. I mean, I can't really go against Ribas. Of course, with such a massive favorite right now, it's hard to bet against that. But like you said, it could get interesting with the length here. If Rodriguez can keep her distance and really just make it a striking game and not get taken down to the ground too often, I think that she has a very good shot of getting it to at least go, all the way and be scored towards the end. But I really like Ribas probably in the second round here.
Well,
I think she's going to be too much.
You can't sleep on her striking game either. I mean, she's got strong Muay Thai. She was raised to fight MMA. Yeah. Like between the jiu-jitsu, the Muay Thai, like she was just born to do this. So I mean, the length is going to be able to keep her at bay if done properly. But I mean, a few inside leg kicks and everything's off the table. So
Well, yeah, like you said, what the weird thing is I think basically everybody in this country is just bred to fight because it just seems like every every incredible fighter
yeah,
that we've known in the last, there's always one name every single 5 years that you're just like who is this guy? Like there's just
yeah,
always a guy or a girl from this country that just continually pops out. This is going to be a fun one. This is the best way to start off this card. I know a lot of
hmm
people were saying put this in place of the Chandler Hooker fight. That was a big thing that was going on there for a while. But I like the placement in this. Get us excited for this entire event.
yeah.
And that leads us right into the Matt Frivola versus Ottoman Azitar. Now, Azitar is undefeated. He is also the favorite. And I know a lot of people, want to look at records and say that that's what matters the most, and that's who they pick their favorites based on. But this one's a hard, tough. I mean, you have the president of what's the country that Azitar?
Morocco,
Yeah, the
Morocco.
president of Morocco
Yep, yep,
behind this
yeah,
man 100%. I watched his Instagram the other day, and literally the president is behind him like it's his son.
yeah.
So with that kind of backup, it's hard to not go against this guy. But this is an interesting fight.
I don't see this one getting out of the second round. Neither one of these guys is there for the deep water. Like no
No,
one, there's not
no.
going to be one submission. There's not. The only person that's going to hit the ground is going to be the person who gets knocked out. Like
Exactly.
it is going to be fireworks, top to bottom, fight of the night. Like Hooker, Chandler, Connor, Poirier. Like they got a good chance to lose fight of the night to these two just swinging for the fences. And I'm not going to go against the entire country of Morocco. Neither is Vegas. So,
Exactly.
I mean, we're going to go ahead and, I mean, Zatar is a minus 160. So, I mean, it's pretty close to a pick 'em. It's not really that big of a lead, but I mean,
Yeah.
both these guys are just going to be swinging for the fences the whole time.
This is what I call a fan fight. People
Yeah.
who casually like to watch UFC fights, like you have a very odd way of watching UFC fights. I mean, of course, everybody likes the slugfests, but you like the weird submissions, the ground games, the grappling on the fence. You like
Yeah.
all the technical stuff because, of course, you've been involved in that. So if you're just a casual fighting fan, you're just like, I just want to see two dudes beat the living crap out of each other. This is the
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah.
Our friend Josh Parisian on the show, I wrote him after his fight. I said, listen, dude, you gave people what they wanted, which is you set the record for most punches thrown in a heavyweight bout. This is what the normal casual fan wants to watch.
Yeah.
And exactly, this is what it's going to be, which is literally just a slugfest. I'm with you. I don't know that this goes past the first round. I
Yeah.
mean, I think we see an early knockout. This is going to be literally coming out of the gate. You're not going to see, this is street fight. Like someone
Yeah.
got drunk, called his girl a horse. Next thing you know, you're outside in the street and someone's on the ground in 5 minutes before the cops show up. Like
Yep.
that's just how this fight goes.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm gonna go with you, man. I cannot go against an entire country and a president backing this one guy, Zatar. I think I said it right that time. Listen, guys, I tried to get these pronunciations down perfectly. All right. Do you know how hard it is pronouncing half of these fighters' names? And the two guys that literally I watched was DC, of course, and Ariel. And I tried to get their pronunciations down so hard, but it all goes out the window when the lights and the cameras come on. But I'm going to go Zatar here. He stays undefeated, 14-0. To be honest, though, in the lightweight division here, do you see either one of these guys being a future contender, or is this more so they're going to be the punching bags of everybody that's fourth and above?
I think they got a good shot to make it. The problem is that lightweight division is just stacked all the way down.
100%.
And so to crack that top 10, where you're going in there and you're facing, a Dan Hooker or, Paul Felder or just guys that are just so complete top to bottom that you get these guys here, they're just swinging for the fences, trying to rearrange faces with every shot.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is then you get caught in an armbar or now you're on the ground and there's a guillotine or an arm in guillotine or so there's a lot of things that can play out to really hurt these guys once they get past that. So I mean, they're still young, they're still developing.
Oh, very, yeah.
As they get these ground games, get the better with takedown defense, things like that, they can really work their strengths to climb up the ranks, but it's going to be, like I say, lightweight's just so tough.
Well, that's an interesting point you said. They're so young. I mean, we're seeing Conor McGregor. Most people act like this guy's 37. He's on his last couple of fights. This guy's 32 years old, and he just now is saying that he is perfecting his ground game and his ground defense. Like at this age and this stage of his career, with with all the wins, all the championships behind him so far. So, I mean, this sport is one of those things that what gets you into the sport is you're really good at one thing. You're a really good striker. You're a really good grappler. You're a really good wrestler. You're a really good submission artist. Like you're really good at one thing. And then you branch out from there. You start taking, different classes. You start doing other things. And that's how you really evolve in the sport.
Yeah. And like I say, these guys are going to have to grow and have to evolve. And really, I mean, for MMA, 35 is about your peak performance is kind of the common rationality. It's about where like an old man's mind meets a young man's body. Like you're right in there. You've seen enough stuff, So I mean, they've got time. Like you say, McGregor is 32. Max Holloway, who put on a complete clinic last weekend, is 29. I mean, so there's all these guys that are just still growing and still learning. And you just see that like there's room for them to advance and room for them to grow, but it's a steep climb once you get inside that top 10.
Well, they're definitely going to have to take their licks along the way. And that's the thing is, can you survive? And the best fighters do. Can you survive one or two hard losses to some big name guys in the top 10 and then crawl and learn from those, grow and crawl your way back in? That's a very good point with Max Holloway. I think that's what we saw from him. He had a couple. Now, I'm not saying he was ever outside of the top 10 or wasn't a top 5 fighter or, even a top 2 out of that division, but he took his licks. He grew from it. And now the Max Holloway we just saw is arguably already fight of the year. And I mean, if you want to, I mean, it's going to be hard because there's so many great fights this year.
Yeah. Yeah. But, and that's just the crazy thing about that is just, look at that. That's the difference between the number 1 contender and the number 6 contender.
Yeah.
And they looked miles apart.
Kattar looked lost the entire fight. I mean, kudos to him. He took the biggest beating I've ever seen anybody take in an octagon and still be standing at the end. There was 4 or 5 times where I thought he was out, done.
Well, and the crazy thing is he beat his own records for most strikes landed. You know what I mean? Like even his best performance he's ever had ended up like that. Like it just shows you that difference. So like that was 1-6. So you look at like Zatar or Frivola and you say, okay, now, what is that going to look like for them going into the top 10, top 5?
Yeah.
It's going to be that same climb.
Yeah. With such a deep division, it's going to be very hard for them. I honestly think both these guys, while I think they're fun and exciting, they're going to be that, third card every single fight, most likely, unless one of them somehow gets a title chance. But they're probably just going to be those sluggers that kind of stay around forever. They're always on that third card. They're going to be like 26-9. Just massive fight records, a ton of fights. They'll always be on those ESPN pluses.
They will go down that Charles Oliveira route where it's like, maybe you have one or two early losses, but all of a sudden you look up and it's like, they're on a 6-fight win streak. Like, and it's like, now you're number 7, now you're moving up. Like, there's a good shot for that to happen. I mean, their name doesn't have the juice of like a Hooker or a Chandler now. Yeah. But I mean, don't sleep on them in the future.
Yeah, I definitely would agree. There's no one you can sleep on in this business. We have seen that literally come to fruition time after time. Justin Gaethje. I mean, he's definitely not a name like, Zatar, but he is somebody that kind of out of nowhere put on one of the most dominant performances we have ever seen. And next thing you knew, he was in a title fight against Khabib. So, I mean, you can't sleep in in not only this division, but in this league, because there's just always somebody that will surprise you from year to year. Moving on, Jessica Eye versus Joanna Calderwood, excuse me.
JoJo Calderwood.
Yeah, JoJo was the nickname I was going to get, but most people are going to be like, who's JoJo? Because they both names start with J. So if you're a casual fan, I will stick to the official names, but nicknames do come. Trust me, there's a lot of nicknames in the UFC. Here's the deal. My biggest worry about this entire fight, I'll let you get into it in just a second. Jessica Eye has missed weight, right? A couple different times. She struggles with her weight. And a lot of fighters talk about that being such a burden, even, going into a fight. I'm worried about her because she's already made comments earlier this week. I'm really focused on making my weight. I'm focused on, I should be good. I should be good to go. If a fighter like that is so focused on making weight and not her opponent, she could be in deep, deep waters right off the bat. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's happening here, but a lot of people don't understand what making weight does to a fighter, or mentally fighters who have missed weights and lost money and lost fights over it, what that can do to them. So what are your thoughts on Jessica Eye and her whole weight situation that they've talked about?
So you rewind this to last year. These two were supposed to fight.
Yeah.
And Jessica I had to pull out because of missing weight.
Yeah.
And Calderwood took to Twitter and did a little bit of bashing, which is funny because like guys go at it like crazy. You don't see a lot of girls go at each other, especially about something like that. So, good for her. Calderwood. She was on the precipice of fighting Shevchenko.
Yeah.
And took a fight so she could keep fighting and needed more money, and ended up getting caught in an armbar to Jennifer Maia. So, this is a comeback fight for her. She is a minus 120 favorite, not real big. But it's interesting because this is a comeback. This is her trying to show that yes, she still belongs here. Yes, she still deserves to be here. And to be honest with you, it's a great matchup for her.
Yes.
Jessica Eye's got power. She's got strength. She's wrestling. Her wrestling's top notch.
Yeah.
But she's gone down in the big moments to big strikes, specifically head kicks.
Yeah.
And Calderwood's Muay Thai is world class. So, I mean, this is a great spot for her to prove that she belongs there and possibly work her way back up into another title shot.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Jessica Eye is obviously she met Valentina Shevchenko, and she also met the back of the canvas. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that she's got to try to overcome here. But it is interesting if you bring up her weight and you talk about that. I mean, depending on how she is in her mental state, she could be thinking like, gotta get this weight, gotta get this weight, gotta get this taken care of. Or she'll be so focused on that by the time she steps off the scale, she hasn't had the nerves of the whole fight week to build up. Like her mind's been somewhere else, and now she's just like, hey, tomorrow we fight.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely, I talked to, of course, many of you know, my wife's a sports psychologist, and she's actually studying this right now, not necessarily within fighters, but within athletes and how they deal mentally preparing before games, fights, whatever it is. And that's something I was asking her about. I was like, and that's the exact same scenario she played out. She said, this is one thing where this could eat her alive. And especially we have seen her very emotional in fighting in the octagon and after fights and pre-fights. We have seen her. She fights with her emotion. When she's been successful, you can see her emotion pouring out throughout her fights. So this could go one of two ways, and she could either use this against her, or she could just be like, oh, man, I made weight. That was my biggest burden. Now I can just go in there and fight freely. And there's nothing scarier than a fighter who fights freely. I think Max Holloway fought free as can be against Kattar. The way you saw him just – I mean, first off, if you're ever talking to DC and talking about the commentary while you're fighting and dodging punches, you are having the night of your life. But him just floating around like it was in nothing. I mean, I'm going to go Calderwood here. Like you said, I think this is the best possible situation for her. She's going up against a respected opponent in Jessica Eye, but Calderwood, like you said, she had that title shot. She took a fight, got caught in the armbar. Next thing you know, she's spiraling on her way down. She needs to stop this spiraling and really get back towards that title chance, because she was right there right before this fight. I mean, and so I think this is going to be her moment to prove. And I think we're going to get a mic drop moment. Listen, these girls have been chirpy, like you said, all over social media. I mean, this fight is going to be a lot of fun. And I think we're going to have her dropping the mic moment, after the fight and saying, hey, listen, I want my title shot back, and I think it's going to be a really good one. But that brings us to arguably could be the fight of the night. There's a lot of question marks around this fight. A lot of
Yep.
people don't really know Michael Chandler a whole lot because he's not coming from the UFC. He's coming from Bellator. But Michael Chandler versus Dan Hooker. Now, I'm gonna let you go first on this one. I've spoken to Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler's a friend of the show. He's a very sweet guy. First off, this man is in the freakiest amount of shape I think I've ever seen a human being in shape. If you ever want to feel bad about yourself, go to Michael Chandler on Instagram and you will literally just start scrolling back to TikTok or, food TikTok or whatever, because you just feel horrible about your body. I was in the gym earlier this week and Michael Chandler popped up on my Instagram feed while I'm on the bike. And I was just like, no, I'm done. Like, I look at my moose body, I look back at Chandler and I'm like, I'm good. But I mean, this fight has potential right here to be incredible. What do you think on this fight, man?
I think that Michael Chandler drawing Dan Hooker is the worst possible scenario for him.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan Hooker's got incredible takedown defense.
Yep.
The only thing tougher than taking him down is keeping him down. But with that said, Chandler is a different type of wrestler than what's in the UFC right now.
Yes.
The UFC is filled with what they call, and I don't know who's going to be listening to this as far as like casual, deep in depth, but it's filled with what they call chain wrestlers. So that is someone that's going to grab your leg. That doesn't work. They're going to move up your body. They're going to switch legs. They're going to transition. They're going to chain moves together to try to get you down.
Yeah.
Chandler is going to blast through you.
The power wrestler, as I call him.
Yeah, you're either going to hit the canvas, hit the cage. You're going to hit something. He's just going to power right through you, and that's something that they don't have right now in the UFC.
Yeah.
And that's going to be something that's going to be a big advantage to him.
Yes.
Is to be able to go in there and just blast through people. There's one thing that really terrifies me for Chandler in this one, and that is Hooker's knee. Hooker can get that knee up just in the clinch, just as tight as you can get, hit you in the chin with the knee, let alone when you're charging at him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if there's anything that scares me for Chandler, it's going to be Hooker's knee. But Hooker does have a tendency to get drug into a fight that he doesn't necessarily want to be in.
Yeah.
You go back to the Felder fight, you go back to when he fought Poirier. First couple rounds against Poirier, he was dodging, he was throwing inside leg kicks, hitting the right angles, and Poirier just got him into that slugfest, and that's all it took. He just took him just slugged him there from there. So I think Chandler has a good chance to turn this into a wrestling match by just dragging him in there and taking him into those deep waters.
I think the last time we've really seen a power wrestler, for those of you who at least know this person, Brock Lesnar was kind of that style of a power wrestler. He wasn't a chain guy. He wasn't somebody that tried to work on you. I mean, if you were a casual fan of Brock Lesnar, all you saw was him just charging people with his head down, going straight for your gut, trying to slam you down to a canvas. So that's kind of the style here. Now, Chandler does it a lot more efficiently, B with a lot more skill and finesse than, of course, Brock Lesnar does. But that's an interesting point for Dan Hooker's knee, because what people don't understand is when Chandler goes into shoot like that, that is the easiest way to get a knee to the chin, get a knee to the side of the head, and not even notice it. We saw that happen with Ben Askren and Jorge Masvidal. He charged in going straight for the gut. All Masvidal did was, he Superman kneed him in the face, which was incredible. But I mean, you can get caught with stuff like that against guys that are good with their knee. I think the most interesting thing for this fight here, Dan Hooker is great within the first 2 rounds. Dan Hooker's not that great past the second round. Statistically, his best 2 rounds are 1 and 2. Usually that's where he slows down. He picks what he wants to do. He cuts at the legs, depending on who he's fighting, he goes at the legs or he goes in the clinch and starts throwing fists. So Dan Hooker's great in the first 2 rounds. If Chandler can survive not getting caught, like you said, with a knee to the chin, not getting caught with, not getting discouraged if his takedowns are, dismissed in the first couple of rounds, I think Chandler has a very good shot in that 3rd round here.
Well, and Chandler is no slouch on the feet either. He trains at Sanford MMA.
Yeah.
he's got Henry Hooft in his corner. Like, he's got MMA royalty surrounding him. Like,
Yeah.
don't get it twisted. He was in Bellator and he was the face of Bellator.
Yeah.
He's been a multi-time champion. This dude belongs here. The
Yeah.
only question about Chandler is he here too late?
Exactly.
So right now, like, he's not facing a Tony Ferguson or a Charles Oliveira or a guy who's been in there a while. They put him in there against a young lion who is making a name for himself, rising through the ranks.
Yeah.
So it's really just you have a savvy vet against this young lion who's out there just trying to claim heads and try to get that title shot.
Yeah. Well, and that's an interesting point. For those of you who don't know, Michael Chandler is a 3-time champion. I mean, this guy is no slouch. He is a great fighter. And like you, that's an interesting point. He might be too late to the fight. I would love to have seen this Chandler move like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Right. But we get what we get now. And he really has a good shot here. Quite honestly, he has a good shot. If he can take this fight, he has a good shot of getting better matchups, not only in the future, but making a way towards a title shot in the next couple of years if he continues on the right path. But it's going to start here. And like you said, when you've got a young lion versus savvy vet, this is going to be a very interesting fight. And this fight card screams to me sink or swim. It's one of those fight cards where if you look at the beginning of the fight with the Rodriguez-Ribas fight, that is a sink or swim. Someone's going to rise to the top. If you look at the Zatar fight, that's a sink or swim. If you look at the Calderwood fight, that's a sink or swim fight. And now we are at, of course, the sink or swim fight with Michael Chandler, Dan Hooker. He's got a bloated roster. Now, I don't think any of these people are going to be cut. So that's not what I'm saying there. But he's got a bloated roster. He wants to start seeing who's going to rise to the top, who's going to fall off. He doesn't need just people who are going to be in there to fill out a Friday night ESPN Plus card anymore. He's got too many people. So he's looking for the best of the best, and he wants to grow. I mean, he even said it this week. He wants to grow the UFC to the most elite ever, basically, which I think it already is. But he wants to be so elite that they have the best of the third best, the third best. It's like the Alabama. The third best corner is the first best corner on Florida or Ole Miss or whatever. And that's kind of what he's starting, wanting to focus on and build. This is an interesting fight here. It's hard for me to go against Michael Chandler because I like him so much. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Who are you going?
I'm going Chandler, just because I don't think the lights are going to be too big.
Okay.
He's been there. He's done that. He's a multi-time champion. I don't think granted, I don't think Hooker is going to shrivel up, because of the big stage.
Yeah.
But Chandler's been there. He's done that. He has done these walks. A lot of people forget, he was the replacement for Gaethje and Khabib. So he's been in Abu Dhabi. He's trained there. He's done the quarantine there already. So I think this is just going to be a business as usual trip for him. I think he gets it done.
Yeah.
Probably fourth round. I think he's going to drag Hooker through the water a little bit.
Yeah. That's exactly. I'm going with you. I think that Dan Hooker, while he might make Michael Chandler frustrated in the first couple of rounds, this is not Michael Chandler's first rodeo. And that is where I think Dan Hooker's not lack of experience, because trust me, he's 20-9. This guy's had fights. But I think his lack of experience with somebody like a Chandler, somebody at that type of a level, I don't think he's really going in with the mindset that Chandler is an elite athlete, and Chandler is somebody that, quite honestly, after this fight could be feared in this division. I'm going to go Chandler here too. I think he just wears Hooker down after the second round when Hooker statistically starts going off. I think Chandler is just going to be way too much with his power wrestling, and it's going to turn into a ground and pound somewhere around the mid third to late fourth round. I think it's going to be a ground and pound, and I've got Michael Chandler in this one. Shout out Michael Chandler. Best of luck here from a puncher's chance, friend of the show, so we appreciate it. Now we are on to, what'd you say?
See you at the top.
See you at the top. Oh, for those of you who don't know, every time I've ever talked to Michael Chandler, I always get a nice little see you at the top note. So see you at the top, guys. We got the fight of fights right here. We've got Conor McGregor coming back. Now, of course, he's been back. He's had a couple fights. We dominated Cowboy which a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's just Cowboy. He's older. I get that. I mean, I thought the shoulder cracks were pretty darn impressive from a fighter standpoint, because I don't think I've ever seen that in an octagon where it was used as an actual, not used to cause separation, but it was used to cause damage. I usually don't see too much of that. And then Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier is somebody who went through the mud, had a couple of rough patches, and then all of a sudden, like you said, he's one of those guys that had a couple of rough patches. You turn around, he's on a 6-fight win streak, and you're just like, wow, he's just flipped it around, and he's back on the main stage with Mr. Conor McGregor.
I think this is, I mean, obviously they fought in, I think, 2007.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. They are not the same people they were back then. Dustin actually kind of woke up from that. And I mean, since then, his boxing, he's almost known more for his boxing than he is his ground game.
Yeah.
Now the problem is I'm a Conor McGregor apologist.
Same.
It's just no matter what stupid stuff the guy does, I'm just like, that's Conor.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, he looks dialed in, he looks focused, and that is terrifying for everybody on the roster.
Yeah.
And really, as time goes by, that loss to Khabib, he did not look great.
No.
But then you watch Poirier fight Khabib and get dominated, and then you watch Gaethje fight Khabib, and it's not even close to a fight, and you're just like, the person in the world who's done the best against Khabib, was a Conor McGregor who self-admittedly didn't train for the fight. Now you have a McGregor who's training, who's caring, who is putting in effort, and that should scare the rest of the division.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first off, like you said, we are Conor apologists on this show. If you don't know, watch a Puncher's Chance intro. Conor McGregor leads off the show, right? And he ends the show. I mean, there's a slow-mo video of him knocking somebody out at the end of the intro. I love Conor, no matter his antics, no matter what crazy things he does, no matter what he says. Just for some reason, this guy pulls me in. I was with Steve when he fought Khabib, when mayhem ensued in the ring, and we're yelling at a TV. I ran into the other room and woke up my mom, who was sleeping, just because we were flipping out that Conor's getting mugged, and he's fighting Khabib's family. Like, I love
Khabib
Conor.
and Dylan Dennis are going at it in the crowd. It just mayhem is breaking loose.
It was incredible. This is the scariest Conor McGregor I've seen since the champ. Here's the deal. Conor McGregor, his whole goal, he grew up poor, right? Grew up literally dirt poor, had nothing to his name. He rose to the ranks, got all of the money he could ever ask for, lived the life of a king of just going and partying, going crazy. He still wanted to be a UFC fighter just because it kind of was a casual thing at that point. It was I'll go play pickup ball at the YMCA, except at the pickup, at the YMCA, you're getting punched in the face by a professional who's training, right? And a lot of the opponents he was facing were out there to prove who they wanted to be or where they wanted to go. And we saw Conor kind of hit rock bottom, not only athletically, physically, but mentally. I thought this Conor McGregor has all the money he needs. This Conor McGregor has all the things he could ever want in his life. He has a successful whiskey company, Proper 12. If you drink whiskey, go get it. They don't sponsor us, but I mean, I like Conor.
We would take their money. Conor.
Yeah, I mean, Conor, if this ever becomes a thing, Conor, Proper 12 is great. I have never had it, but if you want to pay me, I will every night. But it's one of those things. Oh, before I even go any further, my apologies. This episode is brought to you by FNX Fitness. Go to fnxfit.com for all your health, sports, whatever needs you need to be a more fit you. Go to fnxfit.com. Use your promo code TLRHOST. That is TLRHOST, all capitals, for 15% off your order. They just sent me this beauty right here, my workout recovery. They now have workout clothing lines, everything also made here in the USA. So support a local company in the USA. Now back to Conor McGregor and the big fight. this Conor McGregor has had everything, has done everything. Now at this point, it's to prove something. And that is the scariest part for me is a Conor McGregor that he doesn't need anything. He doesn't have
Yeah.
to fight for money. He doesn't have to fight for his life. He doesn't have to fight to be a champion. He's done it all. And now this Conor McGregor is motivated to be a champ again. This is the most terrifying, I think, fighter right now in the entire UFC.
Well, his ground game is severely underrated.
Oh, very.
Um, you look at like the Diaz fights, you look at the way he even, I mean, nobody has ever stood up from Khabib after
Yeah,
getting taken down. And he was able to do that. I mean, so you look at like strength on strength. If you go striking, you give Connor the edge just because that left hand has been blessed by God. Like he just, if it hits your chin, like it
yeah,
just is what it is. And then, you know, Dustin's ground game is, I mean, clearly, I mean, he's a legit black belt on the ground.
100%. Yeah,
But Connor's no slouch, like he can, his takedown defense is good. I guarantee you he's worked on it since the Khabib fight. He's had some time,
yeah.
so it is terrifying. I lean on stuff I've read and heard and listened to, and Dylan Dennis, who's another Bellator fighter, is McGregor's training partner for jiu-jitsu, and
Yeah.
he's talked about how dialed in he's in. He's never seen him this dialed in. So I mean, it is terrifying. The only thing that gets me on this one is if it goes past the third round.
Yes. Yeah.
Poirier's gas tank is second to none.
Yeah.
Connor notoriously, no pun intended,
No pun intended. I was
no
just
pun
about to
intended,
say.
has faded in the later rounds.
Well, and see, I think the most interesting thing about Connor is the things that we all critique him on and the things that we really harped on heavily after the Khabib fight. People trash his ground game, whatever. If you want to say he had a bad ground game and that's the reason he was so bad with Khabib, that's all well and good. Conor McGregor has come out and said, listen, I know my striking is top notch. I really don't need to improve on my striking all that much. He has spent the last basically 2 years working on his
Mm-hmm.
ground game and working on his cardio. He looks insane. If you see him go back to the Khabib fight, I promise you, Google Conor McGregor Khabib fight weigh in, Google Conor McGregor Dustin Poirier 2. It is massively different the way
Yeah.
he looks. First off, him with a shaved head looks terrifying in and of itself. But I
Yeah.
mean, just physique wise, he looks 10 times better. And the things that we critiqued him on, he went out and worked on for basically the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing here is, like you said, is Conor McGregor really serious? Is he really serious with his cardio? Is he really serious with his ground game? Is he really serious about getting back on top? We've seen Conor talk a lot and say, yeah, I'm serious, blah, 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 blah. Then he comes in and gets worked by Khabib, and he didn't look good even though he took a round off of Khabib. He really didn't look that great. I mean, he was breathing heavy after midway through the first round.
Yeah.
So if we have a real dedicated Conor McGregor here, this is going to be terrifying for this division. And I think we're going to see Conor McGregor not only holding the belt again, but maybe a Conor McGregor Khabib 2, which would be the fight of all fights, especially if Conor McGregor is preparing for that fight all the way back now. But he can't overlook Dustin Poirier.
Well, and you got Ferguson kind of faded off to the background a little bit. You got Oliveira kind of sliding in his place.
Yeah.
There is a lot of fights to be made, a lot of big fights, a lot of big names that could, that you could throw in there. So, I mean, it's definitely going to be an interesting time. Quite frankly, throw Max Holloway in the mix, a McGregor Holloway rematch. McGregor fought Poirier and fought Holloway when they're very early in their careers. They're not the same fighters they were now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's a lot. Listen, there's money to be had. There's money to be had for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
It,
Dana's getting your $69.99. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna happen. So it's one of those things where I'll just be excited to see exactly how it plays out, and really, this is the fight of all fights to have.
Yeah, I think I think if Conor doesn't look past Dustin and doesn't look towards that Khabib rematch, like, he keeps talking about it. I hope that he's not overlooking Dustin and thinking, I mean, he's projected, I'm walking in there and knocking him out inside of 60 seconds, which we have
Yeah.
seen Conor project and we have seen Conor do. So I don't know if Conor's just that confident that he is so much superior to Dustin Poirier, even still after Poirier's worked on his game so much that he's that confident, or if he's overlooking Poirier because he really wants that Khabib too. That's the only thing that would worry me here. Conor's a not that big of a favorite, as most people would think. This is going to be a pretty decent fight. Dustin Poirier plus 240, Conor McGregor minus 300. So it's an interesting matchup here. I just don't know that Dustin has what it takes to take down Conor, especially this kind of a Conor.
Listen, if you're looking to make some money, plus 240 Poirier is a good bet. Like,
Yeah,
he's got a great shot. He's got everything it would take to be a world champion.
yeah.
And he's one of the nicest guys in the world.
He
So
really,
it's tough. It's tough to argue against that. But a motivated, ready to go McGregor is just it's tough to bet against.
yeah, and that's, I mean, even Dana White said in his press conferences earlier this week, he said, I've never seen a Conor McGregor, even when he was champ, look like this. I mean, he looks so ready to hold that belt again because, like we've been saying, he's just done everything. And at this point, I think he needs that desire to hold the belt again, and he needs that drive. And I think that's what's pushing him is he has nothing else to accomplish in his life, and he's too young to not have a goal to set.
Couple the fact that Khabib announces his retirement,
Yeah.
and there becomes a path.
Yes.
So Poirier, McGregor, Hooker, Chandler, Oliveira, Gaethje, Ferguson, all those guys, there became a path.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll order some FNX, and there's a path for me to get in there at that point. I mean, everybody's welcome. So it just opens everything up in a way that just is intriguing. With Khabib saying that he's looking to see who impresses him to see if he's going to come back or not. McGregor goes out there, starches Poirier inside 60 seconds, picks up the microphone and makes
That's
a call out.
Yes, exactly.
Chandler, Hooker, the very first thing I would do if I were either one of them is let Poirier and McGregor know I'll be sitting ringside whenever you guys are ready. So, I mean, there's just so many fights to make in the lightweight division.
Best division in all of mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
Not even close. Not even close.
If I was Zatara, I'd be trying to lose an extra 10 pounds and go down to 145.
I mean, quite honestly, he could go down and dominate or do pretty darn good in 145. But exactly, and that's what we were talking about earlier. Like, Zatara is one of those guys where he could be very successful. He's not. I don't know that he's ever going to be mountaintop successful. This division, at least now. I mean, this division is just so deep, and he's not going to get a shot for a long, long time. Let's be honest. There are so many fighters in front of him that would be given the opportunity. And it's going to shape up in this fight card, quite honestly. If we see a Conor McGregor rise to victory, if we see Michael Chandler rise to victory, I mean, now you've got those two that are up there in contention spot. Justin Gaethje's definitely no slouch. And even though he did lose to Khabib, it's not like Justin Gaethje's just going to disappear. I think Tony Ferguson's going to come back. I think Tony Ferguson needs to go away and get mentally in the right spot. I mean, he even talked about, I really need a mental health coach. He mentally has not seemed in it to me the last couple of times he's fought.
Well, I mean, you got to think he's been chasing Khabib's ghost for 5 years.
This is very true.
I mean, that fight was supposed to happen for 5 years. I mean, there's a famous meme online with the dude in the hospital bed, and they said, "You're out of your coma," and he's like, "Who won the Khabib Ferguson fight?" I mean, he legitimately fought like this was the fight to make for 5 years. So now you have all of this going on, and the path is opened up, and it's not the path that he's been waiting for, and he's just kind of falling apart a little bit. I think that there's a good shot for him to come back and a good place for him to come back. But he's going to have to get himself right. And really, like, Gaethje, was unstoppable that night. If the Gaethje that
That was a
fought
Max
Tony,
Holloway. That was a Max Holloway
yeah,
Cater fight. It was. I'm in my zone. There's nothing you can do that's going to stop me.
yeah, and Oliveira was a nightmare of a matchup for Tony, just
Yeah,
because they're so similar.
very.
Tony does more crazy angles and things like that, but Oliveira's on the ground is just he's world class. You were not going to shut him down.
Yeah.
So I mean, but I don't know, like let's say Connor wins this and Poirier loses this, and you go Chandler Poirier, or maybe a Chandler Ferguson or a Poirier Ferguson. Like now you
I think
get,
Chandler. Think Chandler Ferguson would be a really fun matchup, to be honest.
I mean, there's no bad fights.
Exactly.
There's no bad fights there.
That's what's crazy about this division. There's nothing you could say that would make me go, ugh. I mean, there's just no bad fights in this division. This
Yeah,
is the craziest class of world fighters that we have ever seen and probably will ever be. The amount of people that are at the top of their game that are world class fighters in this division is
hmm,
mind blowing, to say the least. I mean,
yeah,
when Conor McGregor, you guys got to put this in perspective. He is the 4th ranked fighter.
yeah,
Conor McGregor is arguably the best fighter in the entire world when he actually puts his mind to it. He's the
yeah.
4th ranked fighter in this weight class, in this weight class right now, with all these great fighters in place. It's pretty astonishing.
Well, I mean, you take Michael Chandler, multi-time Bellator world champion, been at the top of the game forever, has been the guy that when they're ranking fighters in the world, it's UFC, 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 Chandler. Like
Chandler,
he's been at the top, and the best fight he could get coming in is the number 6 guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just so deep and so stacked that it's going to be crazy.
All right, so let's role play this really quick and to finish it off here. Dustin Poirier loses to Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor, of course, should be, in my opinion, projected to have a belt fight. Now, if Khabib says yes, I want to fight, does Conor automatically get that rematch with Khabib after Dustin Poirier, or does Conor have to go through some more hoops to get back to Khabib, or does Khabib not even show up after this? Do you think he just bows out?
I think the Khabib Connor thing is tough, because Khabib said he's just not real interested in it.
Yeah.
Now, he said that, you know, people say lots of things.
$70 million,
And that's the tough thing is he gives a lot of his money away. Like
yes,
that's not his motivator. So it's tough. But like so you got McGregor, he calls out Khabib, like you've got Oliveira hanging around, you've got Poirier hanging around, you've got Hooker, and you got Ferguson. Like you got all these guys who are just Gaethje just hanging around.
yeah,
So I mean, I could see if Connor wins, Khabib says, I'm done, and now it's Connor Gaethje for the title,
yeah.
or Connor Chandler. There's a lot of different ways that this could play out.
Well, and that was my next question. So if by all means, let's say Khabib bows out, Connor, of course, is waiting. He takes, I would assume, the interim championship, or there would be a fight for the championship. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Does Michael Chandler, if he has a dominating victory over Dan Hooker, does Michael Chandler move into that spot to maybe fight Conor McGregor for the belt, or do you think he has to go through some hoops to really project himself up there?
It's all about schedule. It's all about, um, you know, does Gaethje blow out an ACL or fracture his hand?
Yeah,
I think Gaethje's the next one to get the fight.
yeah,
But if McGregor goes out there and beats Poirier and says, inside 60 seconds, like he says,
yeah, yeah.
and says, cool, I'm ready to go in March. Can Chandler be ready in March? Can Gaethje be ready in March? It just goes. There's just so many things at play as to the scheduling to see who's going to get that shot.
Yeah.
I can tell you one thing, that if it's Gaethje or Chandler, the other one is going to get that first defense. So, it may not be, yeah, it may not be, it may not be Gaethje or Chandler in March or April, but it will be in July or August, know.
Yeah, this year, first off, Dana White came swinging out of the gate this year with already a massive fight card in Max Holloway. We actually have one debuting January 20th. Now I know we didn't talk about this fight card at all.
Hmm.
It's kind of for obvious reasons. If you don't know, Conor McGregor's fighting this
Yeah.
weekend, and I
Yeah.
could not. I didn't want to really pass up this fight card. I wanted to dive
Sure.
deep into this fight card. Uh, this year is going to be incredible for fighting.
Yeah.
I love Dana White, what he has done not only with this sport, what he did through the entire pandemic. I praised on the Locker Room podcast so much. Praised what he has done, how he's done it, how he's been able to keep this sport alive. I mean, if you really look at even the NBA ratings were so beyond like down and gone because people have been so checked out. People were dialing into UFC in record numbers.
Hmm.
And I think that was honestly because he was one of the first people at the table back to live shows and back to doing what he loves to do and does so well in building the sport of UFC. This year, of course, this fight. What is a fantasy fight for this year that you would like to see, or a fight that's already been made up because there's been several fights like Francis Ngannou and Stipe. They're coming back for their bout. There's some very interesting fights. What is a matchup for this year that you're excited for?
I mean, I'm excited for John Jones to be in the heavyweight division. Um, I'm excited anytime Francis fights, Francis Ngannou. I'm excited.
He is the
Um,
scariest human being I've ever seen.
I've never seen. Oh, if for anyone who hasn't watched it, go watch Francis Ngannou versus Alistair Overeem. You literally saw Alistair's soul leave his body.
Yep,
Like it was insane. So anytime he fights, I'm interested. Israel Adesanya moving up to light heavyweight
that's going
against
to be
Jan
interesting.
Blachowicz. That
Yeah,
is a huge fight.
yeah,
Um, and that one interests me because here you go 180 to 205, or
yeah.
185 to 205. So now you have like this gap here. So what's going to happen? Is he going to float back and forth, or is he? I mean, for all intents purposes, is he chasing John?
Well, and that's the thing is basically as John. First off, John Jones is my favorite fighter. To be honest, I love John Jones, and he's one of the funniest human beings ever. He keeps calling Israel his son. He's like, my son keeps chasing me. My son's after me. So
Yeah,
the thing is I hope that he doesn't get caught in this. Oh, I need to find John. I need to find John. I need to find John. The John Jones we're seeing now is completely 100% sold out to heavyweight. He said he
yeah,
has no interest in moving around. He doesn't want to lose weight and go back down.
yeah,
He's building his frame for heavyweight, which, oh my goodness,
yeah,
John Jones at heavyweight. If you see his frame, he reminds me of Stipe in the sense that Stipe is more of the skinnier heavyweight, but it's a
yeah,
lot quicker on his feet, a lot better stamina. Except John Jones has better striking, better kicking. He's
yeah.
longer, he's bigger, he's faster than Stipe. So, I mean, are we going to get if Stipe is able to somehow beat Francis, which it's going to be a tough one to be honest. But if Stipe is able to retain the belt, beat Francis, do we see a Stipe John Jones fight in the very near future?
I think there's a good chance that if he beats Francis, he retires.
Oh, that's interesting too, because he did talk about it after the DC trilogy. He
He's
talked
got
about
he's got some eye issues. He's
yeah,
got,
yeah,
Stipe's been people sleep on Stipe. Stipe has more title defenses in the
yeah.
heavyweight division than anyone else.
Greatest heavyweight of all time, at least
Um,
right now.
and it's just he's been in some wars. Like he is definitely,
Yeah,
CT comes for everybody. And listen to a Stipe interview, I feel like CT may be coming a little quicker. So I wouldn't be mad if he got out of there. Good for Francis to finally get it. I mean, Francis hasn't fought in over a year.
yeah. That's a crazy thing is I was just thinking about it when we were doing this and I was going through just different UFC fights for the year. Francis has been basically a no show for a year,
I
and
mean, he fought. Gosh, I forget who he fought now. He fought one time. It was 20 seconds.
yeah, knocked him out.
So
Boom, done.
it's not. He talk about kind of mismanaged. That guy, his career is just. It's the same thing. Ferguson chased Khabib's ghost for 5 years, and Francis has been chasing Stipe for the same amount of time. It feels like so. Um, anything in those heavyweight divisions I'm excited for. Davidson Figueroa at 125
Yeah.
is a nightmare. I'm bigger than 125, but if I saw that guy walking down the street, I'd cross. Like,
Yeah.
he's a scary dude.
Yeah.
TJ Dillashaw comes back. Cody
Oh yeah,
Garbrandt's talking about going back
yeah.
down. Like, there is
Yeah.
just even in the light divisions, there's so much excitement, so much stuff going on that
I've heard that Henry Cejudo is also talking about coming back.
I don't know. You got to look at that man's Instagram. Listen, once again, I'm bigger than 125, but so is Henry Cejudo right now.
Yeah,
So,
Henry Cejudo, he definitely took a pool selfie the other day, and I was like, "Ooh, Henry Cejudo is taking retirement to the max right now."
Listen, he took retirement straight to Krispy Kreme, and I ain't mad at him for it. Like,
Which I know a lot of these fights. I listen to a lot of Ariel and DC. They have a really good show. I'm not a massive Ariel fan, to be honest. So if you are out there, more power to you. But I really like DC. I don't know what it is. Even though like DC is not only a great fighter, there's just something about DC that I just keep going back to. I really like the guy, and he keeps saying that he really thinks Cejudo is going to come back. So there's so many weird possibilities that could happen, and who knows? The thing with fighting is fighters get desperate when they spend all their money. We've seen that several times throughout UFC history of fighters that blow all their money after making their big payday. Next thing you know, they're 36 and they're fighting, and they shouldn't be. So I'd rather, especially fighters, I'd rather them bow out early. Like Henry Cejudo walked away up top of his game, the best. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. This is going to be a great year for all of MMA. I hope this show was fun for you guys. I love talking fighting. Steve knows his stuff, and that is why I couldn't have picked anyone better to do this show with than my co-host Steve, man.
Well, I appreciate it. This has been a ton of fun. Super excited for this weekend. I hope everyone has lots of fun, spends lots of money gambling. I got to buy a fight, so I can't afford to gamble, but we gave you some lines out there. So hopefully you guys, Uncle Dana doesn't come down and come after you for illegally streaming it. But
yeah, I was about to say, if you are a streamer, Uncle Dana is on his way. So
listen, I don't know anything about it, so I've never done it.
I've never illegally streamed anything in my life. I would definitely never illegally stream the Kansas City game yesterday.
Yeah.
Come on. I would never. Well, Steve, episode 1 is in the books. I hope all of you enjoyed it. If you are not a fight fan, or if you're a semi-casual fan, I know there's a lot of you out there because you've written to me and talked to me about it. I'm telling you, I hope you enjoyed the show, but I'm telling you, invest in the pay-per-view this weekend. Watch it, and I promise you, you're going to fall in love with all of MMA, with all of the UFC. It happened to me. Steve got me into it. I started watching some small fights here and there. Next thing you know, I'm watching a bunch of prelims with a bunch of people that nobody even knows exist except their families. So yep. That is the boat that I'm in. Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining me today.
All right, buddy.
As always, guys, I'll see you next time.
We'll see ya.
I hope you all enjoyed that episode of A Puncher's Chance. If you want to know more about the Locker Room Podcast, follow us on Instagram at the Locker Room Podcast 615. We are most active on there, and the link to not only our podcast, but all of our other social media is the link in my bio on my Instagram. So check us out and enjoy the show.